Before we lived here, we used to live in a very small house just outside the town of 100 Mile House in the Cariboo region of British Columbia here in Canada. It was a great place. The house itself was pretty small. My wife and two children and myself lived in it. Only heated with wood. No, I think there was one baseboard heater in it. Anyway, what was so great about it is that there was a deck that ran around three sides. Because it was on a hill, the side facing the low side was a deck. You could look down over the yard. But the back side, which is where the driveway was, you'd call it a patio because it was actually level with the ground, or a couple of inches higher than the ground. And on warm summer days, we would often sit back there. And I would often sit back there and just whittle. We'd been out to visit my sister and brother-in-law in Alberta, and they loved to go out in the countryside. So we collected a few sticks, because at the time I was into doing a bit of whittling and a bit of carving. And we found a little grotto, well, that's sort of a wet place where we came across diamond willow, which was beautiful. So we took a few samples of that home, and I think I grabbed a piece of, maybe it's red willow, I don't know, don't remember. I don't think it's birch. Anyway, get back to the story. I was sitting on this patio and whittling away, and my family were not home at the time. They were in town, I guess. And I could hear, okay, what was great about this place is that it was the edge of our yard, the edge of our entire yard, bordered tens of thousands of square miles of wilderness, not countryside, wilderness. A lot of wildlife. It was a fantastic place to live because of location, you know. Saw a wolf up there once, saw many bear, had a lot of bear encounters while living up there. Deer, of course, some moose. So I hear this sort of crashing in the bush a little ways away from me, so I start to pay attention because I know it's going to be deer, moose, bear, what have you. And just keeping an eye open, and I look to my right after a few minutes, and I see a fully grown black bear wandering beside my van directly towards me. This bear was keeping its right paw up in the air. It was not putting weight on it, so obviously it wouldn't have been in a very good mood because it had an injured paw. It wasn't paying attention to me at all. It didn't know I was sitting there, so I stayed quiet for a minute, just to see how far it would how far it would come close to me. At one point, I was getting a little uncomfortable, so I just said to it, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And then it looked up, and if a bear could roll its eyes, it did. It looked at me, rolled its eyes, heavy sigh, turned around. It just looked exasperated. It walked back into the bush, and then I heard it walking around behind the yard again towards the neighbor's place. And the neighbors were on the other side of a ravine from us. Again, we were out in the country, so it's a pretty private area. But I gave them a phone call. There was nobody home, but I left a message just to let them know that there was a bear with an injured bear, maybe just a bear with a thorn in the paw, who knows, heading in their direction. I knew they had fruit trees. Eventually, I did hear trees snapping next door to me. So I don't know. I never did hear back from them what happened. No big deal. Happens all the time in that area. It's just part of life. I can tell you one thing. I've had a lot of bear encounters in my life, and I would far sooner come across a bear than a lot of people downtown here where I live. A lot safer. Okay, so I guess I should get to the point eventually. That was kind of fun. That's what kind of stands out as one of my good memories of encountering wildlife up there. There were many, but that's one of my favorites. So what I was doing sitting on that deck was whittling this thing. Yeah, if I remember right, it's not cottonwood. It's not just willow. I'm not sure. It's pretty hard, pretty tight grained. I don't think it's poplar either because it's too strong. Anyway, this cane that I was carving and whittling. Okay, the top I'm just redoing now because see it's rounded now. It was too pointy before and just hurt too much on the palm of the hand. It's mostly for looks anyway, but I'm going to continue playing with that until I've got it just right. But I hadn't touched it now for probably 12, 15 years. But that's what I had so far. So we'll just run down it and I'll turn it a little bit. So you can sort of see what's there. I don't really have much time for it anymore, but I used to just love doing this. Well, whittling, I guess it's really more like carving than anything. But it was sure fun to do. And yeah. Can you guess which colors I used to stain it? That's right. Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. And then after the sanding was complete, I used brown shoe polish. I didn't oil it. I just used brown shoe polish and worked it and worked it and worked it. After all the sanding was done, I worked it just with my hands. And it turned out pretty smooth. I mean, you can see now it's kind of dusty. It's been sitting around here. But, and it's not, every little indentation is not perfectly finished. I don't care about that. In general, I think it's kind of nice. But I just really worked with some of the knots in the wood, as you can see, here. Some of the imperfections. It's the imperfections that make things interesting. I mean, look at this. Look at this little stripe here too, If when you find a piece of wood and you carve into it, if you can work with those things. Now, I didn't carve, I'm not carving a bear or a rabbit, a bunny, or a gopher, or a seal. It's just a design. It's just strictly something from the imagination. And that's what I like doing. That's why I paint the way I do too. I rarely use references very tightly. There might be loose references. I rarely sort of copy another painting that I've done. I never copy a photograph. That's virtually never happened. It's not a matter of pride. I actually consider it freedom to be able to paint what you like. So yeah, started to carve into it with this, basically it's a skinning knife. And I use an electric drill to drill a few of the holes, and then I was able to use a wood rasp to elongate some of the holes and give them a more interesting shape so that they weren't all round. And then I used this knife, and then also, the wood rasp, and an X-Acto knife, or a really sharp, sort of like a utility knife with the razor blades in it, to carve very tightly into certain areas. And then after all that, what took the most time by far, and any of you guys who do woodwork, you will know, the sanding took by far the longest. I probably started with 120 grit and worked my way, I don't remember, but it was likely 300 or something like that. Maybe even higher in grit, just to get things smooth. A ton of work, but kind of rewarding. But this was always too pointy, so I'm fixing that now. It'll probably, it's not a big job. It'll probably take me another 10 years to finish it though. So that's it, really. No painting today at all. And it's been a real pleasure to not paint it today. Talk to you soon. If you watched this for painting, sorry to let you down. See you soon.